Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. Tonight, we need to talk about Johannesburg's latest new mayor, how bad coalition politics harms cities, and show correspondent Mash No Potatoes is here. Let's get into it. And we start News Worth Knowing with Paseka Motsaneng, better known as Punga-wielding Pastor Mboro. Now, to our Shona-speaking viewers, I just want to say, the first time I spoke about Pastor Mboro a few weeks ago, I did not know what Mboro means in Shona. But now I know what it means. It means, like in TV terms, eggplant. Y'all know what it means. Okay, Pastor Mboro has made headlines for years for outlandish claims, including that he went to heaven to meet God and came back with selfies, and also went to hell while he was up there and then went down to wrestle with the devil. Now, Pastor Mboro was denied bail yesterday after being arrested on allegations including kidnapping and possession of a dangerous weapon, which we know he did because we all saw him do it on multiple videos from multiple angles. If you missed it, here it is. Mboro and a bodyguard forced their way into Motsediso Primary School in Katleong, wielding at least one punga and at least one rifle, which is never a good sentence to hear. One punga is bad. At least one punga? How many pungas are there? What is the size of the problem that we're dealing with? Mboro faced down school staff and made off with two crying and screaming children who turned out to be Mboro's own grandchildren who did not want to go with grandpa or his bodyguard or their pungas and rifles. So now Mboro has been denied bail, and I get it, guys. He's been to heaven. That's literally the biggest flight risk I can imagine. You can't be a bigger flight risk than you went to heaven to have selfies with God. Right. Next on News Worth Knowing, we have frankly unbelievable news because, and I can't believe I'm reading this, the Department of Home Affairs is doing a good job. They've cut visas and permits backlogs in half. Yes, apparently there was a backlog of 306,000 applications that have been accumulating since 2014. And I have to say, 306,000 applications backed up over 10 years? That's not a backlog. That's the government department version of constipation that requires a hospital visit. You're going to need black coffee, a banana, Weet-Bix, Coca-Cola, a quiet afternoon alone, and a medical professional to unclog that size of buildup. Somehow, the Department of Home Affairs has managed to process and communicate 146,524 applications to the applicants since the DA's Leon Schreiber took over the department. And it's not often that I congratulate a South African politician. And this time I won't be able to either because Home Affairs Minister Leon Schreiber has still got me blocked on Twitter. Please, Leon, I still don't know why I'm blocked. I never tweeted about you. Surely being blocked by Home Affairs is not allowed. How am I going to get my smart ID? I need it. Speaking of IDs, Home Affairs has also been pursuing cases of identity fraud, which many South Africans have been talking about recently because of the investigation into former Miss South Africa contestant Chidima Adetshina's mother. Chidima's mother is being scrutinized for allegedly committing identity theft 2 decades ago, and amid the Afrophobic pile-on to Chidima, many people missed that for Home Affairs fraud to happen, you need Home Affairs. There must have been South African Home Affairs employees working with criminal networks to offer an ordinary person the chance to get a fraudulent ID. And Home Affairs is now going after these employees. In 2021, a Home Affairs official, Judy Zuma, made 768,000 Rand in 16 days. How did she do this?
The secret ingredient is crime.
That is exactly right. 2 weeks ago, Judy Zuma was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment for her role in a syndicate that supplied fraudulent passports to foreign nationals. Judy apparently processed 192 fraudulent passports in 16 days and made 4,000 Rand per passport. So that's 768,000 Rand in 16 days. And look, credit where credit is due, Judy Zuma committed 192 crimes in 16 days. That's impressive work, guys. She's living up to her family name. Like, she's doing good by the Zumas. It seems Judy Zuma was recruited into the scheme by another Home Affairs official, Zima Shange, who is facing 10 years in prison themselves. And last week, another former employee, Tony Stout, got 5 years behind bars on 9 counts of fraud and contravening the Identification Act. The Hawks and Saps have also apprehended a man accused of manufacturing fake green ID books and selling them for R1,000 each, which any high school kid could tell you is a solid business plan, but they could do it for 500. Fake ID. They've already worked it out in their grade 9 EMS Build a Business project. They know what they're doing. Now, it's important to recognize a few things about this Home Affairs turnaround. Firstly, Minister Leon Schreiber deserves credit. His action in the last 3 months has caused the backlog unclog. He may also have something to do with these latest convictions of corrupt former employees, although, to be fair, investigations into Judy Zuma began and Zima Shange was convicted before Schreiber became minister. He just gets to talk about it. But it's also important to remember that he has arrived in a department with largely the same staff as the previous ministers had. A new minister doesn't mean a whole new department of staff. This staff that is now clearing the applications backlog at record pace is largely the same staff that was there under previous ministers when things were going so wrong. So if anything, this turnaround also reflects really badly on the former Home Affairs ministers. They had the staff to deal with the backlog, they just didn't do it. Schreiber has. So yes, well done, Leon. Can someone please tweet him to tell him Dan Corder says well done? And please unblock me. Right. Next on News Worth Knowing, welcome back to the Dan Corder Show's very own reality competition. It's the South African Pothole Awards! Yes! Come back! Yes, welcome back to the South African Pothole Awards, the Sappers. Last week, we launched the South African Pothole Awards to celebrate our country's greatest potholes and the local government officials who have done absolutely nothing about them. We're celebrating the biggest ones, the oldest ones, the deepest ones, the ones that have caused the most traffic, and the ones that have killed the most tires. And over the last 7 days, we've been receiving nominations from across South Africa, from Kimberley to Cradock and Mfuleni. And tonight, we are in Mfuleni, where we are delighted to announce our first winner in the South African Pothole Awards. Thank you so much to Kay, keeping everybody anonymous, for nominating what he calls the most famous pothole in Everton West, an area also known as Nkelele. Kay reports that this pothole is so large that you can fit a quantum 16-seater inside it with space to spare. It also holds water so well that in rainy season, the pothole becomes Nkelele Community Swimming Pool. Let's take a look from space. Wow! Look at that. Guys, that is an outstanding pothole. Wow. Let's see the swimming pool. Tara Smith could have trained for the Olympics in that thing, guys. That is proper. Okay, I think that's fair. Congratulations to Mfuleni Mayor Sipho Khadebe of the ANC for your vital leadership that has made this magnificent pothole possible. You, sir, while putting on your jewelry, have done absolutely nothing to bring that pothole to an end, and you'll be thrilled to learn that your very own Everton West pothole is the first winner of the South African Pothole Award. What a fabulous achievement. So this week, the crown is going to Mfuleni, but where will it be next week? That's up to you. If you've got a pothole that you think deserves a sapper, you need to nominate it, like Kay did. Send your sapper nomination to, and this is true, potawards@gmail.com. Yes, I can't believe it was still available. potawards@gmail.com. And remember to really sell your pothole's best qualities. Write its Tinder bio. Let us know what makes it so great, and we will be back next week to crown the next winner of the South African Pothole Awards, exclusive to the Dan Corder Show on ENCA. All right, it's time to welcome back Dan Corder Show correspondent. Mashed Up Potatoes is here. Hey, Mash. What have you cooked for us today from the front lines of South African news?
Thank you very much, Dan. The Betway Premiership starts next month, a time-honored tradition where South African fans can bring their family and friends to a wholesome game of 0-0 football. After almost 30 years of South African football and Kaizer Chiefs not acting very classy, very mindful, or very demure, the league is facing an existential crisis. This past June, the PSL approved the sale of the legendary South African club Moroka Swallows to Marumo Gallants for 40 million rand. The Dubai Birds are just one of many clubs that are victim of a phenomenon called buying status. So tonight, I'll be breaking down this phenomenon and explaining why South Africans are losing so many iconic football clubs. So, to start with, buying a status in the PSL is when an independent party buys the right to play in the league. This can be done in two ways. One, either by buying the club outright. For example, when Bloemfontein Celtics was bought out by social media Tinder influencer Sean Mkhize, so that her son, Andile Mpisane, can become the first player with a BBL. Nevertheless, buying a club status can also entail buying another club's right to play in the league. Now, to show you how batshit insane buying out is, I'm going to need you to bear with me for a second. A year before turning 100, Bidvest sold their PSL status to Chakuma Ta. Hey, Dan, try reading that for 100 Rand. Read it. Read it.
Machi Vandila?
Almost. Give you 5 Rand for it.
Well, then you say it right.
That's like Muvongo settings. I'm not like that. Ooh, need subtitles. Then, after a season of PSL football, TTM then sold their PSL status to Marumo Gallants. Marumo Gallants then proceeded to get relegated from the league, and then they decided to buy the PSL status of Morocco Solos, and now they're back again. So, what I just described to you is not the dating life of a first-year student at Wits, but rather the sad reality of Premier Soccer League today. So, why are so many football clubs so willing to sell their statuses in the country? Well, football clubs in South Africa currently run at a loss. For instance, PSL teams receive a monthly grant of about 2 million Rand. From that 2 meter, teams need to cover their monthly expenses. But when factoring in transport, hospitality, medical services, and the occasional African engineering, that 2 million Rand starts to feel like 100 Rand during the month. Nkosiyam, we need month end to come, please. This leaves clubs with no choice but to find sponsors or other sources of revenue, such as ticket sales and merchandise, to make ends meet. If your team does not have a Mamelodi Sundowns money glitch, chances are ziyakhala ke manje, as your favorite football team is battling to stay afloat and stay competitive in the league, which ultimately results in teams having to sell their status in the league. The PSL have stated that while the merry-go-round of statuses being sold is concerning, clubs have free rein to sell their statuses to whoever is willing to pay. But sadly, this freedom comes at the cost of the league's most important stakeholders, the fans, who sadly have to see their clubs, which they've grown up loving, being turned into 21st birthday presents for stuck-up millionaires. The PSL proactively needs to ensure that there are more funding opportunities for clubs so that they don't have to rely on selling their statuses to make ends meet. Mash not potatoes, ENCA.
Thank you so much, Mash Mouth Potatoes, everybody. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break on the Dan Quarter Show. Coming up now, we're going to take a look at how coalitions done wrong rapidly screw up cities, because Johannesburg has a new mayor, but the same old problems, and Johannesburg must become widely known as a cautionary tale for the rest of the country. See you in a second. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Dan Quarter Show. South Africa is a movie and you're at the watch party. Now, we need to talk about coalitions because we are fully a coalition country now at national level. And so we need to learn how coalitions should work and how quickly things can go wrong when they don't. This issue is important for all of us in South Africa, and to show you how badly things can go, we're in Johannesburg tonight. The battle to be Johannesburg's mayor is kind of a lot like the TV series Game of Thrones. Over the last 8 years or seasons, mayors have been dethroned, mayors have died, former mayors have taken the throne back, there have been alliances and broken alliances and backstabbing and skullduggery, and just like in Game of Thrones, this last 8th season is weirdly dark and just not entertaining anymore. In fact, Joburg is much worse than the last season of Game of Thrones. At least the Game of Thrones final season got 2 out of 5 stars on Rotten Tomatoes. I suspect Joburg residents would give Joburg politicians a flat 0 out of 5 at best. In the last 6 years, since 2019, Joburg has had 10 mayors, depending on how you count. The list on the queue is crazy. I'm going to try read it all. Herman Mashaba, Jeff Makubo, Jolie Di Matongo, Mpo Moruane, Mpo Palatse, Dada Morero, Mpo Palatse again, Tapelo Ahmad, Kabelo Gwamanda, and now last Friday, Dada Morero again. To put it into perspective, there have been more Joburg mayorships in 2019 than there have been winners of Love Island in the same period. Like, that's so many people. And for a body that has the very serious job of running the most economically, socially, culturally, and politically influential city in South Africa, the politics has often gotten really, it's just silly. Like when the DA's Mpho Palatse was ousted as mayor and then reinstated as mayor 26 days later by a court order and got back to work on her first day to discover that she was locked out of her office because the previous occupants had changed the locks. They trolled the mayor of Johannesburg. They changed her locks to lock her out on the first day. That's pretty silly and very weird at a level of power of Joburg politics. And last May, it got even sillier, but in like a serious, silly kind of way. The Joburg Council needed to elect a new mayor. So they had a council sitting on a Tuesday to do exactly that. Every sitting of council, by the way, every time they meet costs the taxpayer R500,000 rand. Don't know where the money goes at those meetings. Judging by some of our politicians' waistlines, it's probably all to catering, but I can't confirm that. So the meeting started at 10 a.m. They were there to elect a mayor, right? Immediately, the EFF asked for a caucus, which is basically when political parties call for a break so they can go off and chat amongst themselves, strategize, and usually politicians caucus when something happens in a meeting that they want to discuss how to respond to, right? They're responding to new happenings. But at this meeting, nothing had happened yet. The EFF just called for a caucus straight away. I'm guessing they hadn't done their homework at home. They needed to chat about what they were going to do. The request was granted. So that's 10 a.m. The meeting paused for caucusing. They came back at 11. The ANC then immediately called for a 3-hour caucus break. That was granted. Then it was 2 p.m. and the meeting broke for lunch. Lunch was 90 minutes. They came back at 3:30 and straight away a bunch of minor parties also requested a caucus break. And that was also granted. And when they came back, the day was over. It was 5. They needed to beat traffic. The meeting was adjourned. Whole day, just caucus and lunch. No mayor for Joburg, R500,000 rand spent. Reportedly, at least the catering was good. And I think this meeting really sums up the disconnect between Joburg's politicians and its people. Because over the last decade, the politicians have been screwing around in Joburg and the people have been suffering. Joburg is a divided city. Many political parties have support, but no one party has enough to rule on its own. So they've been using coalitions to form ruling governments. And they've been doing it all very badly. Over and over again, coalitions have collapsed as parties fight and walk away and choose to switch allegiances. And every time a coalition collapses, the functions of the municipality's executive grind to a halt, while parties haggle to make a new coalition to appoint a new mayor. And then that mayor needs to form the mayoral committee from politicians representing different parties in the coalition. And then those members of the new mayoral committee, the MMCs, have to get to know their new departments and get to work. New mayors means new visions and new priorities. New MMCs often mean paused, slowed, or even cancelled local government department projects when they replace them with new ones. And when this churn keeps happening over and over, towns and cities suffer. That whole process I just described has happened on average every 8 to 9 months in Johannesburg since the end of 2019. And Johannesburg has suffered serious decay and collapsing services. It's like the City of Gold's government has the anti-Midas touch. Everything it goes near turns to shit, not gold. Our water, electricity, and sanitation systems are crumbling. Our roads are literally crumbling. Our streets aren't safe. Whole areas of the city are completely unpoliced. Departments that should be helping weak and vulnerable people are struggling to get anything done. There's tons of corruption and also obviously fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that is because of the choices that the city's political class has made. And in recent years, guys, it's got absurd. The ANC and the EFF agreed to rule together in Joburg, but both wanted one of their own to be mayor, right? And neither was accepting a mayor from the other party. So they decided to install a waste man puppet mayor from a tiny political party to do their bidding. And for that, they went to Al Jamar, a tiny political party that got less votes than you need to get top 10 on Idols. Al Jamar, that's actually true. Al Jamar represents some Muslim voters in Johannesburg, and that has secured them just a few seats in local government. They have no real power. So Al Jamar was thrilled to get a mayor, even a powerless one who existed solely on the whims of the ANC and the EFF. And that's how we got Thapelo Ahmad, a man whose best moment as Joburg mayor was when he was appointed and he tried to jump on two guys' shoulders and he failed to get all the way up. And then he just hung on, grinning for dear life for a while. That is exactly how his entire mayorship went. He couldn't do anything and just hung on as long as he could, grinning for dear life. Thapelo Ahmad was so clearly useless and inept that the ANC and the EFF eventually got so embarrassed by his incompetence that they got rid of him. They sent their own puppet mayor back to Sesame Street. But no worries, because on Sesame Street, Al Jamar had another puppet mayor to give them. And that's how we got Kabelo Gwamanda, a man who Al Jamar said had a tertiary diploma in business, which he does not have, but who still allegedly ran a business scamming people out of money by offering funeral insurance and then disappearing when anybody died and needed a funeral. He was the mayor of Johannesburg. And Gwamanda has been a shocking mayor. Everything has gotten worse under his mayorship. When the most disastrous Joburg building fire in generations happened, Gwamanda was useless, and the ANC stepped in to provide leadership. Gwamanda was equally useless in response to when Bree Street literally blew up. It blew up. It exploded. By the way, Bree Street is still exploded today. It still looks like Gotham City after Batman had one too many drinks at Groove. Like, it is rubbish. Eventually, Gwamanda, the puppet mayor, was also forced back to Sesame Street, and that's what started the process that has led to the ANC's Dada Morero becoming mayor for the second time with broad support from a weird coalition that includes somehow the EFF and Action SA. Action SA, the party that swore they would not work with the ANC in the next 300 years, and then helped elect the ANC's Dada Morero. Dada Morero's first try as mayor of Johannesburg lasted 26 days. Now, if that's ringing a bell from earlier on in this show, that's because that's how long Mpho Phalatse was out of power before she was reinstated as mayor by the court and returned to office to find herself locked out of her office. That was new Mayor Dada Morero's first time, locking the new mayor out of their office. I'm not saying he did it, I'm just saying he was there. At this point, I, as a Joburger, don't even care who is mayor. I don't care which party, I just want the nonsense to stop. I just want the same people to be in office for a while so they can do the work they're supposed to do for the city and we can hold them accountable if they don't. The wild thing is that even if Mayor Morero holds together this coalition, he still won't have much time on the job because local government elections are coming in like 2026. That's not right now, but that is now. And that's where we come in. Because I know that so often we South Africans can feel hopeless. We can feel powerless in the face of this endless political fuff show. But there's something we can do, and that's vote in local government elections. Now, I know you're sick and tired of being told to vote. I know you're sick of it. And I think most people do now understand why it's important to vote nationally. But way fewer people vote in local government elections. And in many ways, those local elections are just as important. Because your local representatives can be the difference between your neighborhood having working streetlights or not, having roads or a South African pothole award. And your local government can be the difference between you having safe streets or not. Your day-to-day life is more affected by local government politics than national government politics. We need to know what our local government politicians are getting up to. We need to hold them accountable. And one of the best ways to do that is to vote. And if you're watching this thinking, thank God I don't live in Johannesburg, I get it. But I hope you realize that the mess and damage of bad coalitions and constant churn can happen anywhere. The big thing that we as a country need to do is make political parties understand that we will reward them with votes for making coalitions work, not for collapsing and walking away from them. In the last few years, it seems as though political parties have thought that we'll reward them for abandoning coalition governments. That's what they've been doing, a lot. But we need to make them understand that we'd far rather have stable, imperfect coalitions than constant mess. Because when coalitions collapse, the politicians don't suffer, they have catering. We suffer. So that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes again for free on enca.com, and we'll be back on Monday for the next episode of The Dan Quarter Show. Thank you so much for being here. Good night and have a great week.